So India is gearing up to host the G20 Summit in the national capital, New Delhi, and world leaders are expected to arrive in the Indian capital. But as the world leaders assemble in New Delhi, the host India has proposed that a G20 statement on the war in Ukraine should also accommodate the views of Russia and China to avoid an impasse for the divided bloc. Now, according to sources, India has now proposed that in the G20 statement, while condemning the suffering caused by Russia's invasion, it should also reflect Moscow's and Beijing's viewpoint that the forum is not the place for geopolitics. The sources say that this suggestion comes as deliberations of the world's top 20 economies have been hindered by differences over Russia's invasion of Ukraine that have hardened since last year's Bali summit. The Western nations want a strong condemnation as a condition for agreeing to a Delhi declaration. While Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who will be attending the meeting instead of President Vladimir Putin, has said that Moscow will block the final declaration if it does not reflect its stand. Moreover, according to the Kremlin, the Russian President Vladimir Putin is not planning to make a video address at the upcoming G20 summit. Meanwhile, the Indian Prime Minister, who has sought to use India's leadership of the G20 to showcase India's emergence as a major power with an ability to forge unity on big global issues, and that's why the declaration is being seen as something that is key for the meeting. The Delhi meeting aims to produce a joint statement, as it would be the first one in the G20 summit's history, which will potentially raise questions about the group's viability. Moreover, as the group of 20 leaders prepare to attend the meeting, uncertainty looms over whether the world's largest economy will even be present at the table. We're talking about the United States, as the American President Joe Biden is going to get tested for the COVID virus for a third time. And the result will determine if the President's Air Force will land in New Delhi. The White House maintains that the trip is in fact on track when President Joe Biden arrives in India. He'll of course sit down with the host Indian Prime Minister for a bilateral meeting. And this is going to be Joe Biden's first presidential visit to India, and there is a lot to in fact discuss between Washington and New Delhi. Now, there are clear differences on how the two countries see the Russia-Ukraine war. The United States has in fact put its entire weight behind Ukraine, from arms to support on the global stage. India, however, is calling its position as neutral, although India has maintained that its position is not really neutral if one were to analyze things, and that India has taken the side of negotiations and peace. New Delhi has time and again refused to in fact pick a side in this war. It has categorically criticized the violence and has stepped away from any kind of interference or condemnation of Russia's invasion. The second issue is how differently India and the United States, of course, see the future. The Indian Prime Minister has been vocal about his push for the global south. Biden has even welcomed Modi's demand of inviting the African Union to the G20 grouping. The American NSA, Jake Sullivan, has said that his country is committed to working with emerging market partners. And the two leaders might also discuss what is happening in the Indo-Pacific, and this is a topic where Biden and Modi are expected to see eye to eye with each other. But there are issues of China and also China's belligerence that have been a point of divergence. The latest case in point is a map that's been released by Beijing. The map claims parts of India, Taiwan and South China Sea inside China. Joe Biden has been raising the issue of China's expansionism than previous American administration, so India and the United States can of course speak about a plan to counter China in the region. They're also expected to speak about economic cooperation and multilateral investment opportunities. Over the years, New Delhi and Washington have found an important space for diplomacy where, even with the changing geopolitics, bilateral engagements have continued to grow. And this meeting in New Delhi is expected to be an extension of that. And there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever that there are points of divergence between India and the United States, but the two nations seek to find their way on the basis of their points of convergence. All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we're being joined in by our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who is joining us live from New York. Susan, this is an important point that will of course be discussed during the G20 summit, where India has said that for a joint statement for the G20 summit, not only the American perspective on the Ukraine war, but also the Russian and the Chinese positions should also be accommodated. How accommodative do you think the United States would be to also have the Russian and the Chinese position in a joint statement if that were to happen?
Yeah, so India is really in a delicate spot right now. And it's not just India. India represents, for the most part, countries of the global south, which really have decided to, first of all, take a position that they want an end to the war on the one hand, but on the other hand, many of them are doing business with Russia. So, they really can't afford what the United States is asking them to do on the one hand. And on the other hand, it's not just the United States, it's its European allies who are just desperate to latch on to this liberal world order that really has dominated their foreign policy for so many years. And this is a time when, other countries in the global south are saying that maybe, you should really factor our economic issues into consideration. But India, to the best of my knowledge, said that, of course, they condemn. The declaration is going to say that the Ukraine war is condemned. But on the other hand, say that just to appease Russia and China, for them to also be satisfied that this is not a place for to talk geopolitics. We'll see how that goes down with the United States. But, both sides, they seem to have very firm positions. It just reminds us of the deadlock and gridlock we face often at the United Nations Security Council with veto power of permanent members. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also very quickly, Susan, do we have any update about the COVID-19 test which President Biden will have to take before his plane, of course, lands in India?
Yeah, he's expected to take another test before he lands in India. And of course, we're watching that very closely. He said that he has not had any symptoms and he's going to, possibly wear a mask. So we'll have to wait and see. But it seems like he doesn't have COVID.
Absolutely. Absolutely indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Susan Tehrani, for joining us and getting us all those details there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.